Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service of Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here's your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Hi, I'm Father Jay Friedel. Welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown, a conversation between people of faith about issues that impact our lives here in the greater Joplin area. This morning we're going to talk about a situation that nobody likes to talk about, and that is the fact that sometimes people take advantage of our vulnerable children and our vulnerable adults. And it is an uncomfortable situation. Recently, in November, there was a new film that was put out called Spotlight. And in it, it highlights the crisis of when this thing took on a huge thing in Boston, just took on a life of its own, where we started to root out and discover some of the abuse that was occurring in the Catholic Church. The film is an excellent film. I'd suggest that everybody sees it. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about what our role is as people who try to protect children, some of the mistakes we've made in the past, but we'll be right back with all of you after this Mercy Minute.
Hi, I'm Angie Separita with Mercy Hospital Joplin, and I'm here today with Dr. Samir Dalia. Dr. Dalia, your specialty is in hematology and oncology, is that right?
Yep.
Can you tell us a little bit about what you do, what your specialty is, and what your patients can find when they come and see you?
Yeah, so at the Mercy Cancer Center, we deal with the surgical outcomes with cancer patients. We have radiation oncologists who also help with the radiation therapy of cancer patients, and then myself as a medical oncologist helps with the medical therapy, including chemotherapy and other therapies for cancer patients.
Very good. And you're located inside the new Mercy Joplin, right?
Yeah, we're located inside the new Mercy Joplin. We have our own cancer center entrance, and we have a beautiful infusion center and radiation suite.
And so if patients need to be seen, do they need a referral?
They don't need a referral.
They don't. So simple as that. They just need to call. So if you want to find out more information, you can call the number on your screen or visit mercy.net.
Hi, I'm Father Jay Friedel, and this is Faith in Our Hometown. This morning we're going to be talking about the issue of child abuse and child protection, and what do we do as communities of faith to try to make sure that everyone's aware of what's going on and make sure that our children are better protected and other vulnerable adults. I have two guests with us this morning, Gordon Kyler, who is the pastor of Unity Church of Joplin, and Randy Garris, who's a longtime pastor in the area right now at Ozark Christian College, working, training students for ministry, which is a great job. Gentlemen, this is an issue that impacts, and I know I mentioned the Spotlight movie. Of course, that movie was about how this came down and occurred in Boston and how we discovered how prevalent it actually was in the Catholic Church. It was something that, that people didn't want to talk about, didn't want to acknowledge, didn't want to go there because it's so unpleasant to talk about. But I also know that it doesn't just occur in our church, it occurs in other churches, and it occurs anywhere it's a problem. Is this something that you guys have had to contend with in your own ministries, or in your denominations?
When I knew we were going to talk about this subject, you almost want to throw up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The nature of a culture, you can tell whether or not you have a culture that's healthy or whether a culture that's really sick by how they treat the powerless. And the abuse of children is probably as loud of a signal that evil does exist. And a culture at least has embraced that evil at some level. I don't know of anything more heinous than occurs.
Right.
Now, anybody who thinks it's just a new thing has had their head in the sand.
Right.
I'm 61 years old, and I remember my dad having a conversation with me when I was just a little boy, because one of the men that I liked, one of the men that I thought was just funny, and I only knew him casually, but I just really liked him. And my dad told me that man's a raging pedophile. Now that's a 55-year-old story, 57-year-old story. It's been around forever because evil's been around, but no doubt about it, it accelerated.
And we, the damage to individuals' lives is just, it's you know, again, it does just, there's a visceral reaction.
It's beyond
You just,
words.
think about
It's
it.
beyond words.
You know, it just,
Yeah.
you know, it's a killer of souls,
Yeah.
you know, in
Yeah.
so many ways because of the way that people have to deal with the collateral damage that happens throughout life. We also know that, you know, 10% of this is only 10% of abuse like that ever happens by strangers. 30% of it occurs in families, and 60% of it by other trusted adults. So other people that are known to those people who are abused. And just the prevalence of it is just, it's staggering when you finally open your eyes and see it. And again, even though I hate the fact that, you know, that was going on in my church, I'm at least glad that some of it has come to light, because now we've kind of ripped the scab off of it, and the light can hit it now, and please God, we're healing. So one of the things I want to make sure that we get in on this morning's show is that, again, if there's anyone out there who's still hurting, if there's anyone out there who's still dealing with the ramifications of this, and you've never talked to anybody about it, please find somebody to talk to about it so that the healing can begin.
Actually, go ahead, Gordon.
You have to. Before I became a pastor, I taught in a small private school, and a number of our children had been abused and molested. And the damage it does to those kids and their families, it breaks your heart to work with these kids. It's not just physical and emotional, it is spiritual damage. And we are called to step into that place and help facilitate. You know, I'm not so sure you could ever completely heal from that, to tell you the truth.
Completely, I would probably agree.
But I think our purpose is to, you know, help at least the victims come to terms with it and learn how to work through it and become functional in society. And as in that role, we need to let the world know that we are here. We have open ears and open hearts.
And it's so hard being in that situation where, you know, sometimes when it was the church that caused the abuse, it's hard being in the position to say that the church also wants to be in the position of now assisting and aiding and healing. And it's no wonder why, in many ways, you know, people who've been hurt by somebody who works for the church doesn't want to trust, you know, the person who works for the church to come in to try to do those kinds of things.
Let me throw in, I mean, there's no doubt about it that trusted individuals, you see it all the time, trusted individuals have been so consumed by their own sin that they get their own blindness. All of us can self-justify anything we want to if we get deep enough into the darkness, self-justification. But I guess I would want to remind people that the fact that the counterfeit exists within trusted people is always a witness that there's a real and a true. Nobody counterfeits $3 bills because there are no real $3 bills. You counterfeit $100 bills because they're real $100 bills. And so when you find the counterfeit, it makes you sick, but it's also a reminder that the real is there, or you don't counterfeit it. And so within the Christ followers, within the church, there are some scoundrels.
Yeah.
But the scoundrels are counterfeiting what is legitimate and real and is not the norm. Not by a million miles is not the norm.
Yeah. And I mean, that's always just good for us to remember, because I mean, any of us can look at any of our denominations or any of our congregations, and, you know, we see what's, you know, in so many instances, what's not right. This was one of those that stayed hidden for so long, because again, I just think that the ramifications of trying to wrap your brain around it are so disgusting that it makes it hard, and it made it hard, especially even where we were as a society. Because even as a society, we didn't deal with it well. We didn't do child protection well. We didn't think, you know, we didn't see kids as even having rights, you know, 50 years ago. And now we've just come so far, thank God, you know, in terms of that.
There's probably an 80-year-old woman watching us today whose mom wouldn't let her tell the truth.
Right.
There's probably a 70-year-old man whose father or mom wouldn't let him tell the truth about what happened in their own family, what happened with an uncle, what happened to the brother.
We're just not going to talk about that.
We went through a stage where we didn't trust the victims.
Right.
And I think we have moved from that. Now, I don't know that we know exactly how to look after people with with the right degree of trust and to still have people in our lives. We're still figuring all that out, but we've moved from not trusting the victims, I think.
Yeah.
I think we still have a ways to go with that, though. One of the things that strikes me is you pick up the paper, even here in Joplin, almost every day there's a report of somebody being charged, arrested, or convicted
Every day.
of
Every
child abuse. And if you read it, you see this child had mentioned that something was going on in the past. And same thing, was not being heard. And we have a long ways to go as a society, I think, in that regard.
Which is why I don't mind saying that I am sold out to being somebody in the neighborhood who wants to talk about the living God who heals people. And not only heals the victims, but there are people so caught in this junk that if you do not have a real encounter with the living God, you're going to be one sick individual your whole life. And I don't mind saying that there's no tricks, there's no shortcuts to this. I do believe encountering your Creator and your Redeemer. I'm pretty sold that there's something happens, both victims and villains in that story.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, I know that there are a lot of people out there who define ultimate reality in their own way, and I'm fine with that. And I think that those can be good people too, but I certainly am personally sold on that encounter with mystery that kind of, I think in our best sense, still opens us up to respect, dignity of every individual. Because again, we've always upheld that. It's just we did a lousy job of practicing it in some ways, and some people got in there who should not have had any access to kids. So in terms of those things, we do a lot of training for how to create a safer environment. We've invested in it in big time. We train thousands of people every year. Nobody gets access to working with kids unless they've gone through the training, unless they've had a background check, unless they've learned what signs and things to look for, unless they've learned how to make a report if they see something that makes them uncomfortable, unless they've done all those things.
And work in partnerships with other people.
Oh yeah.
And working with partnership. If you can't work with partnership with other people so that everything's in the light, you can't work with children.
Well, right. Well, and I mean, again, that's why nobody ever works with kids by themselves either.
Coaches, counselors, the list goes on. We are people who have allies that work together, or you just can't work there.
Yeah. It is a challenge for us in terms of, because nobody wants us to bring, even sometimes the conversation to the table. I keep telling everybody in my congregation, I want you all to be trained. Even if you're not going to work with kids, come do the training, come see what it is, because what that does is it creates a much better and a stronger safety net. There's always going to be people out there who are looking to get through the net. And those people are going to be around. It's not going to matter. They're going to do whatever they can to look for an opening. And if they don't find the opening with me, they're going to come to you. And if they don't find the opening with you, they're going to come to you. Because there are people who are out there who are predators. We've got to learn how to make sure that we are doing enough training and enough safeguarding so that as many people as possible don't get through that safety net. But it's a challenge for us. It is. And it's constant vigilance. It's something that we've got to continue to do. So we've been talking this morning about child protection. And it's something we need to stay vigilant about and continue to do. We'll be right back.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service of Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
So welcome back to Faith in Our Hometown. My name is Father Jay Friedel, and my guests this morning are Gordon Kyler, who is the pastor of Unity Church of Joplin, and Randy Garris, who is a longtime Christian pastor here in the area, and right now at Ozark Christian College. Gentlemen, we've been talking about the very unpleasant topic of protection of children. And we've been talking about the fact that training is one of the things that we need to do. Do you guys have any specific training programs that exist in your parishes or your churches that you do to make sure
We do. We work with our insurance company very closely, which publishes a lot of videos and training. And we're a very small congregation, but the conversation occurs regularly, and it's something that is always on our radar. We have trainings up at our headquarters where we send people, and we're just constantly vigilant. And so far we haven't had any issues, and I affirm that's going to continue. But we don't let up.
And Randy, you help train pastors. So what are you doing in terms of the training of some of the Christian pastors, that are going to be working out in the area? What do you do in terms of their training?
We're going to tell people that a passion to work with children is terrific, but that's not sufficient. You're going to need, in addition to that, you will get background checks. Background checks are essential. Now, are they foolproof? Absolutely not.
Right.
But background checks, and so we say, for example, the congregation that I was in, or the people that we're coaching, that you spend the money on background checks. We recommend in-services, and there's any number of services that we can bring in for people on the outside who will come coach and teach on it. Many are local that will come and do in-services. Biggest deal we're going to end up doing is everybody works in partnerships. You don't take a child anywhere. You never take a child anywhere that there is not someone with you, and it's not because there is an inherent distrust of you.
Right, exactly.
It's because there is a place to say, this is so vital that I want to honor the reputation of this child. I want to honor the reputation of that adult who's working with them. And so we partner everything because it's an honorable thing to do, not because we're incredibly suspicious of everyone. It's just the pattern we live.
The way I try to frame it because I do a lot of the trainings because I really did firmly believe that because priests were part of the problem, I really want priests within our congregation to be part of the solution. So I spent the time and the energy to be a trainer of our volunteers, within that context, rather than just leaving it to somebody else. And so in terms of doing that, one of the things I always tell people is just like, this isn't because we mistrust anyone individually, but we have a healthy skepticism of everyone because we know that people will work their way into these situations. And so what we learn how to do is in those partnerships, as you call them, we just make sure that no one is ever alone with children, because unless someone is alone with someone, they can't perpetrate the abuse. So, we teach people, they have to, if they've only got one volunteer, well, then they can't have the event. They've got to have another person stay. They've got to make sure that somebody is there. And it's protection not just of the children, but also the protection of the volunteers.
Right. Yes.
And everybody has to follow the same rules. And those are some of the biggest warning signs, is when somebody doesn't want to follow the agreed upon procedures and the agreed upon rules. So, for example, somebody who thinks the rules doesn't apply to them. All right, big warning sign. Somebody who wants to spend...
That's delusional in itself.
Oh, exactly. Somebody who wants to spend all their time just only working with kids, and they've got no other connections in any other part of the congregation or any other part of the parish. Again, another big warning sign. Somebody who is doing what we would consider any types of grooming behavior of kids. And the other thing is, again, and I point this out to people, and I just say to them, it's just like, do not expect that when these people come around, people who are perpetrators come around, that the creepy music is going to start.
No.
That only happens in the movies. It only happens on TV. The creepy music doesn't start in real life. And so, they're people. These are people who do these things, are charismatic individuals. They know how to work people. They know how to, to groom a group.
The socially awkward already got caught.
Right.
Exactly.
It's the skill. Now here's where, again, these have all kinds of nuances, and I'm not sure that everyone would buy in what I'm saying, but I don't think there's any doubt that we're in a culture that is more sexualized than we ever dreamed it would be. And because people have a hole in their own chest, they don't have personal wholeness, they really believe that sexual some kind of sexual escapade is going to fill that hole. That's why it has increased, at least in my view, as much as it has. We're a culture like we've grown up in a brothel, and it is greater and greater and greater, and the darkness is there. So let's put light as much as we can. Let's
Sure.
put healing as much as we can. You deal this thing at the roots and at the symptoms as well. And the roots are, if people don't get well, your sexual life will cut your throat and the throat of other people. And so it's get well. Get well.
That's one of the things that we discovered, you know, and again, this was as, you know, society was, you know, becoming more permissible as you know, anything went, you know, in terms of sexual mores and things like that. What we found out was that that's when we had that huge spike in our own congregation. And I guarantee you that anybody else that would do the same studies would find the same things in any area of the there was a spike there in a period of time where things, you know, where it was anything goes, and because of that, people were doing stupider and stupider things, thinking in their own sick minds that there's nothing wrong with this, that this is about my fulfillment.
This is normal. And
Everybody does it.
And that was where, and that kind of illness. I mean, you know, when I do the training, when people say, "Father, how can anybody do this? This is just so sick." And I'm just like, the fact that you're thinking that way means that there's something right. The people who do these things are thinking in a completely skewed way.
Sin, by its very nature, creates delusional thinking.
Yes, it does.
The so-called pornographic, innocent culture. There's no victims from pornography.
Right.
The pornographic drunk is incredibly dangerous. People who are acting these things out, I'm going to sit here with a man of my own personal conviction on this, that the pornography in our culture is a direct tie-in to what happens to that 5-year-old girl next door.
Oh, yes.
And that 5-year-old girl next door has the right for everybody here to say this pornography is not a victimless thing. It is a grooming of a culture to be more and more predatory.
Well, it's also,
go ahead, good.
It's also, I want to go back a little bit to something you said earlier about the hole in the chest. It's a pain. It's a drug, and it's caused by pain, and that pain is that we have lost our spiritual connection. Well, not all of us, but we all have to some level and some degree. When that spiritual connection, that connection to God is not there, we suffer. We are in pain. And what do? We look for a drug. We look for a medication. And it can be...
And not even prescription-wise.
That's what I'm saying. It may not be prescription. It may be a metaphorical drug.
Right. Yeah.
An addiction to pornography and, abusing children, abusing the innocent. And we live in a culture that seems to be moving away from a spiritual connection to the divine. And because of that, we're seeing more and more and more of this.
The part that kills me is that I know that because sometimes, people have seen people who are spiritual do awful things.
It sends a wrong.
What it does is it's that negative. It's that negative thing that where it says, "Well, I'm staying away from all of it."
Yeah.
And again, it winds up just creating this bigger issue. When really, again, I just, that's what I always used to tell my students. It's just like, you may not want to connect this way, and that's fine. This doesn't fit for everybody. Catholicism won't fit for everybody, but find whatever it is you do connect to and figure out how you're going to connect in a way that you're not drying up on the inside, some way that you have connections. Because again, when we teach this in higher ed all the time, that there's a whole wellness wheel, but the piece that we never get to for anybody is spirituality, because it makes everybody uncomfortable. Every wellness model in the world has spirituality as a component of the wellness model,
but they leave it so blurry.
I have to laugh because I help teach some some of the classes at the university for lifestyle enhancement and those kinds of things, and I was laughing because they even took the chapter out of the book. That's how uncomfortable they were with the whole issue of spirituality. They took the chapter out of the book. Now they say it's part of the model, but then we don't do anything with it.
Well,
so
I think
it's a mess we've created.
I think one of the things that people don't always think about is churches, religious institutions, whatever. We are human beings and we're in the midst of this. I think that's one reason it exploded so much in the Catholic Church, is because all of us, we're in the cutting edge. We deal with the darkness. We don't run from it. We say, we're here to shed some light.
Yeah.
And because of that, as communities, we are placed in the midst of some of the darkest things that human beings deal with. And I think, because of that, we're going to see instances like we saw with the Catholic Church. It's happened in other churches as well as happened in other institutions.
Well,
And our purpose then is to say, we're stopping it here.
Yeah.
And the way
No
we're
more.
stopping it here
No
is
more.
we're
No more.
bringing back the light.
No more.
well,
Yes.
and I think that is something that we again are very unified on in our approach, and it's a good thing. I hated the fact that the movie had to have us at the spotlight of the spotlight, but I am going to say that by having us at the spotlight of the spotlight, I'm just glad that if we got the scabs ripped off and we can bring some light to it,
Right.
that maybe there will be some healing that will still occur. Because I still think there's a lot of broken people out there who've had abuse and things like that touch their lives. And anytime it's been connected to religion, it makes it even 3 times worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It does.
we'll be right back after this Mercy Minute. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Hi, I'm Angie Separita with Mercy Hospital. I'm here today with Dr. Danny Liu. He's a bariatric surgeon with Mercy, correct?
Yes.
And can you tell me, what does that mean?
Bariatric surgery is also known as weight loss surgery. And at our bariatric surgery center, we focus on taking a multidisciplinary approach to fighting obesity. And that includes behavior modification, lifestyle changes, and dietary counseling. And combined with surgical intervention, this usually leads to a very long-term and durable, successful weight loss. At our center, we also offer a full complement of surgical options, including laparoscopic room-wide gastric bypass, sleeve gastrectomy, and the lap band. And we tailor these to the individual needs.
So it's not just something that people just dive into. You actually work with them over the long course.
Yes, that's correct. It is our aim to provide a safe, proven, and effective option for those patients that have morbid obesity who have struggled for too long on their own.
Very good. If you want to find out more, visit mercy.net.
Hi, I'm Father Jay Friedel. Thanks for joining us this morning for Faith in Our Hometown. My guests this morning have been Gordon Kyler and Randy Garris. Gentlemen, thank you for coming and talking about a topic that none of us would really want to deal with, but unfortunately we didn't deal with it for a long time, and now we have to be part of the solution for bringing it into the light so that we can get something done about it. That issue, of course, is child abuse and ultimately child protection. It's a life issue. We have to do it. The one thing that I would want to end with this morning, beyond a question of a doubt, is that if there are any of you out there who were abused at some point in time in your life by anyone, but especially if that happened at the hands of somebody in a church somewhere, find somebody to talk to about it. Don't let that kill your soul. Just find somebody that you do trust to talk to about it and go for the healing that's necessary. Thank you for joining us again, and this is Faith in Our Hometown.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. here on KSN. Brought to you as a community service by Mercy Hospital Joplin.